My name is Ahmed El-Gwindi. I'm 24. I'm from Queens. Born and raised. My mom's from Romania. My dad's from Egypt. They came here and they made me. I'm a writer. I study creative writing at City College, and I enjoy taking photographs. I also run the Stay Napkins project, which is it's a way for me to sort of share my poetry beyond. I started writing on napkins because I would always have ideas, but I had never had paper around, and I didn't want to write it on my phone. So I always had napkins in my pocket because my nose was always runny, so I would just kind of write on the clean ones, and eventually accumulated a bunch. And I felt like that was my niche. It's what made me special. Art is expression. It's the medium in which the soul sort of comes to fruition. I almost want to say it's like the human nature, the human experience. Art is supposed to make you feel something, right? Whether it be good, whether it be bad. And one could argue whether it be nothing. So it's whatever medium you decide to choose. Whatever medium you decide to express yourself is what art is. My purpose as an artist is self-expression. I love to sort of express myself, the feelings that I feel, emotions, stories that I have, and I think there's lessons to be learned within everybody's stories, and I like to sort of present that for people. Where the lesson might not be as clear, but I like to sort of put it in there. Yeah, art helps me. It doesn't help me deal with my emotions right away. I tend to sort of look back and read my old poems and sort of realize, oh, I was feeling this way for a period of time, or I was feeling that way. And each poem each poem is sort of like a time capsule. So when I grow, or later on in time when I look back, I sort of notice, oh wow, I used to be in this place and now I'm here. And it presents a full circle moment because I can see the growth in myself. Yeah, consciousness is the soul. Consciousness is the soul of the body. It's our life force in a way, which I guess is what the soul is. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. Life to me is existence, I guess, on a basic level. I don't think I've experienced or lived long enough to really know what life is on a grand spectrum, but to me life is existence, and life is the path that you choose to set out for yourself and to build. There are many different directions you can go, but the path that you choose is the life that you choose. I don't know, I'm in a place between places, I would say. My paths haven't diverged or converged. Yeah, there's many different paths you could take. It's kind of like a river, and a river kind of flows and then breaks out. I spend a lot of time at the piers in Tribeca, and I often stare at the water and admire its fluidity, wondering how I could sort of not implement the fluidity into my life, but sort of be fluid as water is. I often go to find clarity. New York can feel very, or Manhattan specifically can feel very trapping, with all of the skyscrapers, all the buildings, all the streets. So the openness of the piers and just staring out you can actually see the sky. You can see the water and feel the air. And I always go for a moment of freedom and clarity. That's a good question, actually. Being a firstborn generation, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Being a firstborn generation posed a lot of challenges, especially school. Since my parents didn't go to school here, they both went to school in different countries. So when I was going to elementary school, a lot of students had parents that went to school here, so they sort of knew the procedure and they knew like kind of what to do and how to go about it. But for me, it was new, and I was learning it I was learning it alongside with my parents. So we had to sort of learn together how to get all of the books and crayons and pens and this and that. And also in high school, they never had prom, so I had a prom, and it was kind of like, well, what do we do? I think the biggest obstacle was language, since my parents, English was my parents' second language, and it was my first. So I was sort of the gateway into like the academic English routes for them. My mom told me she not used me, but I guess she used me as a resource to better her English, since I was learning it academically. I was learning it the proper way. And I was even taken out of a private Muslim school. My dad says because he wanted me to have an American accent, and my mom says because it was too expensive. So, but I think both might be true. So yeah, and I think it's also ironic, or perhaps full circle, that English was such a big thing for me growing up, and now I've chosen the path of a writer and an English major and the English degree from Hunter College, class of 2020. Language is how we communicate. There's no one, well, I guess there's many or multiple universal languages, but yeah, language is how people communicate, and it's written, it's spoken, it's performed, it's shown. Yeah. I speak one language. I speak one. Mm-hmm. A bit of one official language. I speak a bit of French and a bit of Spanish, but not like I speak kitchen Spanish. I struggle to connect with my outer family on both sides because there are these huge language barriers, and even with my parents as well. I feel a bit isolated in the fact that my English level is much higher than my parents, because sometimes an idiom will go over their head, or a metaphor or something. They won't understand it, so I'll sort of have to take a step back and simplify it. My outer family, who live in Egypt and Romania, they don't speak English, so it's very difficult for me to connect with them. There was a point in time when I did speak all three languages and I could connect with them, and then I grew up and it kind of faded away. I don't know, there are times that I'm sort of like, well, what stories do my grandparents have, or my aunts or my uncles? Like, what are the lessons that I'm missing out on that they could probably teach me? But I don't think about it too much. There's a few cultural barriers. I've been to Egypt more times than Romania, so I feel like I sort of understand the culture there a bit more, and the food. Romania, there's not much I really know. I guess the cultural barrier between my parents and I, well, there is one, because I grew up here and they grew up in their respective countries. So I sort of, like growing up, I would always see the nuclear family and like the American household with the picket fence. So I always dreamed of living in that house. But none of my parents came from that sort of environment, and they weren't raised around that environment. So it was sort of like, why? I would always question why things were different. But as I got older, I guess I realized they weren't exposed to that. And obviously not everybody comes from a nuclear family. So things are different. Everybody's different. Both my parents grew up in a village, and I grew up in the city. I grew up in Queens, so very different, a lot of things. The village my father grew up in, whenever I would visit, I noticed everyone was sort of tight or connected with one another. You would say hi when passing by your neighbor, even like down the street, as opposed to like your next door. Everybody's very like welcoming, everybody's very connected to one another, as opposed to New York. We have a culture of like not knowing your neighbor unless you need something. So that was very interesting, sort of the cultural shock, going over there and being here. Yeah, I can't say too much about the village in Romania because the last time I went was a few years ago and I don't really remember that much. I want to say culture is the environment, and I suppose the rules in which you're raised upon, but I think it's more than that. Culture is, I don't know how to say what culture is without using the word culture. Culture is, I guess, the environment. It's the food you eat, it's the language you speak, it's the places you go, that sort of, the art you make, the art you digest, it's the stories you tell, it's the environment. The American dream, I think, oh wow. The American dream has evolved a lot over the years. I think in like post-World War II up until probably 2000, it was probably like the nuclear household or the nuclear family. You know, you buy your house, you work until you're 65, you retire, and you have your family. Nowadays, things aren't so black and white. The country's evolved, people have evolved, and people's desires have evolved. But also I think the economic state of the country has also had a hand to play. However, I think the American dream is achieving happiness and living a fulfilled life, whatever that be for anybody. I think my dream is to travel. I want to publish books and I want to travel, in whatever case that may be. I would love to do a book tour and just sort of visit all the different cities throughout the world, throughout the country. I think that'd be really cool. And just share my poetry and my experiences with people. Have you been plagued by the inconsistencies of time? Have you found yourself in a place that you don't know where you belong? Luckily, there's a book for that. Where You've Been, a poetry anthology. Will you show me where you've been? Attribute the smell of rain to the universe. I'll admire the glow on your cheeks as you take in the view. We can call it a coincidence that in this plethora of stars, we share time and space. Patent pending. I believe time is a concept that we haven't fully grasped. There's too many metaphors, there's too many things to say about it. It's the thing some people try to get away from. It's the thing some people wait for. It's the sand seeping through your fingers as you try to build a sandcastle. I've grown to learn that time is a series of moments. It's because once you get old, it's the things you remember. It's your memories, and at the end of the day, that's kind of all that you have. I have a tattoo that says, "All we have are moments." If you could see it. Yeah. Because I truly believe it. You know, at the end of the day, you go home and you think about your life, and you think about the pockets of time that are moments in your life. You know, whether they be good, whether they be bad. And I think time is, although we all experience time, everybody has a different definition for it. Because it's a timeless thing that we just can't seem to understand fully. I have an interesting relationship with time. I tend to be more drawn to things from the past. In high school, I had a pocket watch. I bought a Zippo lighter or a cigarette case. I love shooting on film. So I always feel like I'm a person out of time, to say, perhaps by, I don't know, a few decades or 100 years. But I also love technology. So I'm in between time, spaces, places. I always try to be in the present, but it's hard. It's hard because you can only see so far into the present, and you just sort of have to jump into the abyss that is the present. And sometimes there will be light, and sometimes there won't. But the past is easier to stay in because you already know what's there. You already experienced the past, so it's familiar. And it's easier to return to a place that you've been than to go to a new place that you haven't. I don't think I have an answer for what death is yet. I think it's, again, like time, it's one of the things that we all try to understand, but we can't. For some people, death is rebirth. For some people, death is the end. For some people, death is merely the conduit from which you enter the afterlife, or the catalyst in which you enter the afterlife. I like to believe in a mix of theories. I like to believe it's rebirth, but it's also the catalyst for the afterlife. People are energy. The universe is made of energy, and I feel like energy can't be destroyed. It's dispersed and it gets remade into something else. Whether that be reincarnation or the afterlife or something, your energy does not dissipate from this universe, it goes somewhere. And perhaps that energy is your consciousness and your soul. We don't know. There's only one way to really find out. It's interesting coming from a culture in which we used to believe in the afterlife through mummification. It's not so much the case anymore, but sort of going to Egypt and going to the pyramids and learning about how your organs were ripped through out of your nose and you would get bandaged up, put in a sarcophagus and a tomb with all of like valuable things. I think it's interesting to sort of see how the culture of death has evolved throughout the years. And even now, I think it would be pretty neat to be buried with like some of your most valuable things, because whether it be the things that you take in the afterlife, or I think it's interesting, or I think there's something special about being buried with the things that you love, whether it be a photograph or a book or your journals. I think they were onto something with that one. I think I'd want to be buried with a journal. Not all of them, but I think I'd pick one, or somebody would pick one for me. For a long time, I wanted to be buried in the ocean. I have this fascination with bodies of water, and I think in a past life I might have been a sailor who drowned. Maybe that's why I don't know how to swim, because I drowned. But I think it's, the ocean. I think just being surrounded by the ocean and the weightlessness of it, I think that would be cool. Yes, I fear the unknown, and I feel like death is the ultimate unknown because nobody's died and come back to tell us about it. We have theories and we have cultural stories, but there's really no way to know what's out there, what's beyond life other than dying, and it kind of scares me. I think my biggest fear is not living a fulfilled life, because, well, death is a fear that happens whenever you're close to death, to dying, but not living an unfulfilled life haunts you every day. I could be doing more, or I could be doing this, I could be doing that. So it sort of dictates how you live your life. I guess the fear of death could do that too. You stray away from adrenaline type of things like skydiving or bungee jumping, but I think living an unfulfilled life would be the biggest fear for me. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why we exist. I think we all have some sort of purpose. Everybody has some sort of purpose, whether it be to uplift somebody or to find the cure for cancer or to colonize Mars or whatever. We all have some sort of purpose, and I don't know what mine is, but I like to think that mine is helping others. So I always try to help others whenever I can. I don't fucking know, man. I'm not a scientist. The whole universe. Oh man. There's so much in the universe that hasn't been explored. And I like to believe in like the multiverse theory. But who knows, maybe like on other planets, there are people just like us pondering the question of what is the purpose of life, or what is the purpose of our individual lives or collective lives. I think I believe in a higher power. I guess we could call it God. I don't know, I don't believe science can explain everything. I don't know, I get trapped in this thought process of like, is there a God, and what is the purpose of everything? And I try not to think about it too much or else my brain explodes. But I think something's out there. I would say the word God to me means a higher power, something that is beyond us. You could be a god at writing, and no, I don't want to say superior. I don't know. I would say, yeah, I don't know. Well, I was raised Muslim, but I think I sort of grew into a more agnostic way of thinking. I don't subscribe to the idea of, or I don't subscribe to a single religion. I think I sort of believe what I see, or what seems believable in my logic. God was explained as the creator of the universe. He made Adam and Eve, and then they sort of made kids and so on. It's very similar to the Bible or the book of Genesis, but I think in the Quran it was slightly different. I just noticed the similarities from what I was taught through TV. I hadn't learned properly about the book of Genesis up until college, but I think it's sort of, yeah, he's forgiving, but to a certain extent. And he made us all. That's what I was taught. Forgiveness is empathy. Forgiveness is the ability to take your pain and let it go. I forgive people. I have a harder time forgiving myself, I would say. It's a lot easier to forgive other people, I would say, than yourself. And I think most people would sort of agree. I don't know, I think like we could all be a bit hard on ourselves to sort of achieve potential. So I think for me, I need to learn to be a little less hard. I almost said a little more, but a little less, and just be more understanding and forgiving of circumstances, but also just like, some days you don't want to do anything, and that's okay. Yeah, no, it's okay. It's not the end of the world if you skip a day at the gym, or you eat something that might not be the best for you, or whatever the case may be. Tomorrow's a new day, and you could always start over. And that's on God. Yeah, I would say I believe in a soul and rebirth. I read a lot about like past life regressions and how sometimes trauma can carry over from your past life into your new life. And it can be in like unexplained things. For example, I get anxiety every time I go to Boston, or first time I went, I had a really bad headache. And I thought it was the caffeine withdrawal. It might have been something else. So my sort of personal explanation to it was I might have had a traumatic experience in a past life there, according to what I read online. Or who knows, it could be something else. But also, I think even just your interests, you could like a certain aesthetic for no reason, or that just seems appealing to you, and that could be a past life thing, kind of carrying over. And perhaps it's the same soul that lives on, perhaps not. Who knows? I don't know. It's so simple. I would say good is the things that have a deeper meaning or fulfill your life And evil would be things that bring detriment or detrimental, or just detriment in general. That's how I would put it. You choose to be a good person or you choose to be a bad person. Again, it's the path that you choose in life that makes you who you are. I would say yes. There are good people and there are bad people. The distinction between the two sort of lies within yourself as well as within others. Others might see you as a bad person, but you might see yourself as a good person because you think you're justified in whatever the case, or you could be morally gray. I would say there's 3 types of people. It's not as black and white. Perhaps it's not as black and white as I once thought. No. I think as you get older, I think things aren't as simple as they used to be. For example, in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker was always seen as the hero and Darth Vader was seen as the villain. However, you get older, you realize Vader is the tragic character, so although to others he might seem evil, he lies within this morally gray spectrum because he's the victim, and I guess Palpatine is the real evil. A person does have freedom of choice. You can choose to do whatever you want. Sometimes you may feel inhibited by the things that you can do, but ultimately it comes down to you. You can choose to get up out of bed every day. You can choose not to. You can choose to choose whatever career path that you want. You can choose to do something else. It's really up to you. Sometimes I feel like I'm trapped, but that's just, I can still choose to do whatever I want, but within a certain, I guess, field, I would say. Let's look at it. Let's use the example of college. You can choose your major, right? But once you've chosen your major, you're limited to the classes that you could take within the major. So that's a limitation, but you could still choose whatever class to take. There are many ways to get your diploma. It's just that you choose the path that you take. You can take the hard classes first, you can take the hard classes later, or you could do a mix. You could have some easy, some hard, and balance that out throughout the semesters. And I would say that's kind of how life is. You have problems, and you have limitations in which paths you can choose, but ultimately you could choose which path to take. I would say love is energy. It's energy that you put out into the world. And sometimes the energy comes back to you and 2 people love one another. Love heals. Love destroys. Love never ends. There's a really good quote in the Bible, and the book of Corinthians, I don't remember which one, but love bears all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And in the end, love never ends. And I think I agree with that. I've been in love a few times, and I think the last time I think both times were different. I think the first time I was a lot younger, I was 17, and the second time I think I actually knew what love felt like then. Not to take away from the first time, but it was a lot stronger, I would say. I would say the love didn't end. I think we both came to a point where we learned we couldn't move on with one another or stay friends, so we had to go our separate ways. But there's still I still care for her, and I think she still cares for me. So there's a bit of love there, but it's not romantic. It's more of a connection. That connection is still there, I would say. I don't know, but I would say. I'd say when I quit my job. I quit my most recent job because it made me realize I had time to do whatever and to go wherever, and the funds to go wherever and do whatever. So that was a pretty liberating moment, I would say.
What was your job?
I worked at a coffee shop. At first I enjoyed the structure of a routine, but I think over time I wanted to do more beyond the routine, so I had to learn that I had to leave in order to do these things. And one day I left. The feeling of wanting to do more, I would say, or the fear of not living a fulfilled life made me leave, I would say, because there's much more beyond a coffee shop. I think it was a slow, gradual build. I wouldn't say there was a specific moment. I think someone planted the seed of traveling in my head, and over time it grew. I think I've had a lot of dark moments. I think the darkest would be, the one that comes to mind is my 23rd birthday. It's like a handful of my friends forgot it was my birthday. They thought it was November instead of October. And I was in a hotel room because I wanted to treat myself and like have a hotel room in Manhattan. And so the TV wasn't working, and I kind of just sat there waiting for my friends to say something. And I was hit with this huge wave of loneliness that I just felt pretty alone. So I decided to go for a walk, and that kind of made me feel better. Friendship means a lot to me. I think it's the ability to share things with people, or it's the chance to share things with people. You could share stories, you could share food, experiences, and friendship means a lot to me. Yeah, I have real friends, I would say. I think my friends care for me more than I think they do. And I always have to remind myself that they do. Because yeah, the people you surround yourself with is very important. I don't know, I tried to forget his birthday, and he not called me out. I haven't spoken to him in a while. So I would say yes. We could still be friends. I want to say my mom. My mom's pretty bright. She can get kind of sad sometimes, but she's always she's always got a smile on her face, and she's always trying to be optimistic. And I can be very gloomy, but it's nice to sort of be in her presence. Even though I can be kind of dismissive, I still love her. I just need space sometimes, most of the times, a lot of times. But I still care about her. Yeah, I'm trying to be less dismissive. I'm trying to be more open. And I think I just feel trapped. Sometimes I feel trapped in my room, or as if I don't have my own space. But yeah, trying to work on that. I want to say Matty Healy from the 1975. He's always very introspective and deep. And I feel like he'd have some pretty interesting... I feel like honestly he's answered most of these questions in his songs, but I would be interested to see what he says. Or Jake Gyllenhaal. I don't know why. He's like, just also popped into my head. Jake Gyllenhaal from Brokeback Mountain. He played Mysterio in Spider-Man. He's the person Taylor Swift wrote All Too Well about. I think TK was right. I should have put page numbers. Here we go. This poem is called Petrichor. And the city looks different tonight. This cold spring ambiance, 24-floor altitude only accentuates our experience. Will you show me where you've been? Attribute the smell of rain to the universe. I'll admire the glow on your cheeks as you take in the view. We can call it a coincidence that in this plethora of stars, we share time and space. Thank you.